I am not afraid. God is with me. I was born for this. As you can imagine, I spent time this week with people who are angry and terrified after the results of Tuesday's election. Friends and parishioners, even strangers who saw my collar, they knew I would listen and I would care. Despite how we voted, whichever way we voted, as Christians, we all have a duty. We have a way going forward. The people that I talked to, well, they hoped I could give them words of wisdom to calm their hearts. I'm not sure I did so, but being heard and being respected for their feelings left them feeling less alone. And that is the beginning of healing. In most of these conversations, after feelings were shared, people of faith would say, "Where is God? And why does God let this happen?" Now, I know that God does not cause wars or revolts or any other hard time, but I do believe that God knows that they are coming. And I believe that God makes sure that the right people are born and ready to help deal with them. I started today with a quote from my patron saint, Joan of Arc. Joan lived in France during the 100 Years' War. This war between England and France actually lasted more than 100 years, from 1337 and ending around 1453. During what's called the 100 Years' War, this 17-year-old girl led battles that ultimately kept England and the English king from conquering France. It was unheard of then, and now, for a 17-year-old girl to lead men into battle, to wear armor, to ride astride. Somehow, with God's grace, she was able to convince the French leader that she would be able to bring them to victory. Now, one day, as she was leading a group of soldiers towards the battlefield, a woman stopped her and asked her where she found the courage to do this thing. And Joan replied, "I am not afraid. God is with me. I was born for this." And so I quote Joan today and take her words to my heart, but I'm still sometimes afraid. I wouldn't be human if I wasn't. But I do trust that I was born for this. I was born to be here with all of you during yet another time of possibly great upheaval. For some reason, we have been placed here at this point in our lives, at this point in the life of our country and the world. We may never know what it is we do to turn the tide, but God needs us to be here, and God knows why. Our gospel lesson can give us our first task. Now, the story of the widow's mite has been the source of many a pledge sermon. The story is thus interpreted: Jesus admires a poor woman who's giving all she has to the temple, and Jesus condemns those who are wealthy and giving out of only their abundance. I do not believe that Jesus is chastising the wealthy. I do not believe that Jesus is lifting up the woman's sacrifice to tell us to imitate her level of giving. I don't think this story is about money at all. The story takes place in the temple in Jerusalem. Jesus has been preaching and teaching all day, but now he takes a seat and watches the crowd. He's in that part of the temple where donations are placed into one of 13 different chests. At the mouth of each chest, there's a large metal trumpet-shaped tube into which offerings are poured. Rich men and women pour heavy coins into them, and the sound of the coins clattering against the metal echoes, and folks watch. Now, Jesus is watching all of this, but he doesn't take notice of any of the gifts. Rather, he is watching the crowd and noticing who it is that they are looking at. Then the widow approaches with her small offering, and she is the one he tells his disciples to watch. He says the rich have given out of their abundance, but she has given all she has, and that's it. He does not tell the disciples to heed her example. Rather, Jesus has watched the crowd. He notices what they see and hear. He sees that no one notices this widow, and he calls his disciples to notice her. Jesus did not tell the disciples to go and do what she did. She's giving away all that she had to live on, and no one should have to do that. Jesus wants them to notice her presence in the midst of more privileged folk around her. Jesus wants them to develop the practice of noticing the least of these, the ones who are so easy to ignore. Now, as I said earlier, I've had numerous calls and visits from those who are dealing with anxiety and fear. Now, for some, their reason for concern is obvious. They are gay and lesbian folk wondering about the legality of their marriages. They are folks who are or love someone who is trans. Folks who love an immigrant, folks who have heard that their rights and all that will be taken away. So many more. But there are also folks whose anxiety would seem to have little cause. Increasingly, these are the folks I am most worried about, because many of them are in crisis and nobody notices them. Nobody checks in with them or picks up on various cues to their mental state. They stand in the middle of those whose crisis is obvious, and no one notices that they are suffering as well. I think our first step is to look at everyone in our lives through the lens of Jesus in the temple. Not only to notice those whose fear is obvious, and we do notice and comfort them, but to notice those whose fears are masked, to notice them, and to model to others so that they notice as well. As we all deal with our own feelings, this is something we can start doing right now. We can reach out and comfort one another. We can listen deeply and compassionately to those who trust us with their hopes and their fears. You know, it wasn't that long ago that we were all huddled in our homes and afraid of an epidemic. Some of those fears are still within us and are being echoed once again. But this is not an epidemic. It's not the time to step away from each other and close ourselves in our homes. This is a time to engage fully with life and with those who share this planet with us. This can be the start of the work God has called us to do, the start of discovering why we are alive, why we are here, why God placed us at this time. I say this aspirationally, if not yet completely true. I am not afraid. God is with me. I was born for this.